Hello, everyone. Karim, it's time to start. With no transition. It's a pleasure to be again with you this year. Thanks to FAYOLLAS for this brilliant organization. It's a pleasure also to share this fantastic panel with my colleagues and friends. Starting with the quick presentation, what we said of persons who are going to share this panel with me. Starting traditionally with Matteo, do you want to start from the right side? Introduce. Yes?
Okay, this is technology, so I'd rather get over to it. But delighted to be here. Matteo ANDREOLETTI, so heads up the equity investment activity for Patrizia in Europe and North America. Patrizia is a real asset manager with 60 billion of AUM, mostly into real estate sector, about 7 in infrastructure. And notably, we're active with 2 strategies, one defined into the pan-European mid-market, and the second one in technology with the management of a smart city infrastructure fund.
Good morning, everybody. I'm GARCIA-POVEDA. I'm the chair of the board of Legrand. Legrand is a global specialist in digital and electrical infrastructures for buildings.
Good morning, everyone. Laurent FAYOLLAS. So I'm the deputy head of the Infra business at Ardian. At the same time, I'm also the chairman of I-24, so a main activity on hydrogen that we set up with Ardian and a company called 5T Hydrogen, former people from Air Liquide.
And good afternoon, Nick WOOLFITT, head of National Australia Bank's Specialised finance business in Europe. National Australia Bank, the name to give away, is an Australian bank operating out of offices in London and here in Paris.
And finally, Alexis, HOJABR, partner, M&A partner, infrastructure at White & Case. I think we have a perfect combination of what really matters in this sector, because you have on my right side great French operator, major operator, but also we have equity investors, debt investors who all of them, they know this sector and the tech sector also. So I think we are going to work on an assumption. The assumption is that infratech is now a viable asset, and it has become an essential component of infra for investors and operators. Basically, investors and operators need to prepare to what is now designing the next generation assets. So I think what we also discussed with my colleagues before is to be to drive this session around 3, I would say, axes. Is going to be how is infratech defined. Then we will be switching to opportunities. I would say opportunities for investors, operators, and investors being debt and equity investors. And finally, I think what really matters also for all the investors is what are the challenges or maybe risks of infratech. I think it is worth we spend a couple of minutes on what we, and I think everybody is not aligned, so it's really interesting to listen to quite all of the members of the panel to how they see how they define infratech or technology in infrastructure. Angeles, you would like to start with that one?
Happy to give it a go. Good morning, everybody. Well, it's a crossroads term, so between infrastructure and technology. So I guess it could be read in different ways. The one that speaks to me is a rather broad one. Is basically any physical or digital technologies that you can apply to infrastructure at any point of the life cycle that actually enable step change outcomes. And those outcomes can take many forms. It can be cost reductions, it can be energy consumptions reductions, it can be new usages with social value, it can be increasing the resilience of the asset from a climate perspective. It could be many things. But it's a big deal, because if you think about the amount of over 3 trillion a year, out of which 60% will be in emerging countries, and we apply just a modest, I would say, 10% savings figure to that, it can go very, very fast. So it is a big deal, and the choices we make in that arena will actually shape the way the world will look tomorrow.
Angeles, may I ask you a question? So just to be clear, do you consider, let's take one class of action everybody knows? I would say, in my point of view, it's the royal class of action. It was maybe, but it is still is the fiber, FTTX, because FTTH, FTTU, everything. Do you consider fiber being already an infratech asset? And I would like to also hear the point of view of Laurent. Maybe similar or quite close to that is data centers. Both of you, operator, investor, you know data centers and fiber by heart. Maybe, Laurent, would you like to challenge or to question Angeles on that one?
No, I think I'm sharing her view, and the way we're looking at it is very large. So then you get several tools, right, looking at the way you want to develop your business. Really, digital is a strong part of it, fair to say, and we are looking at how to develop towers, network, fiber, data centers, so big parts of the investment pool. But I would say we're linking also, I guess, the tech part to innovation. When I'm thinking about hydrogen, for example, you need to develop everything, right? We got already some solution to manage. Just as a quick remember, we got 80 million tons of hydrogen already used in the world, so we got solution. But now, if we want to move at scale and really embrace mobility, other processes, industrial processes, we need to move all those, I would say, equipment at scale. And here you need tech, you need a way of thinking a bit differently. Fair to say, we were discussing about management. Now you need, if you're part of a hydrogen development, telecom development, you need management ready for innovation, ready to move forward with a new type of equipment, new type of businesses sometimes, so that really, I'm sharing the view to enlarge a bit the definition of tech and what we can deliver with it.
Matteo, you are the head of equity investments for Patrizia infrastructure in Europe and North America, but you are also the founding partner of Smart City Infrastructure Fund. I would like to have also your view of how you may want to define tech in infra, having also in regard your focus in smart cities?
No, absolutely. Look, we do take an holistic view of what the future of our community should be. And it is true that if you go back and step and see at the heart of it, what is an infrastructure investment, the notion that pops to your mind is the one of essential service. And clearly, for a long time, essential service was transporting goods and people from A to B, broadcasting signal, providing clean water, space heating, and you name it. But clearly, the digital transformation is there. infrastructure will be disrupted. And the way we are envisaging to enable this community of tomorrow is clearly to look at what is going to be the infrastructure stacks. You will have, first of all, the connectivity that need to be ubiquitous, efficient. Clearly, there is a sustainability angle attached to it. And that's why probably the first wave of investment has been focusing on digitalization of our telecommunication sector. And FTTH is probably be at the top of that agenda. And there is still work to be done for the next 5 years or so.
And Matteo, exactly on what you are pointing out, what in your view is going to be the 5 new years areas of, I would say, hot topics for and investment opportunities?
Look, it's the coupling of the system. So once you get efficient connectivity, you have data processing capacity with data center, not only the hyperscale, but also the edge data center in our urban environment. And you have a data analytics that apply to application, what we call vertical, and technology like blockchain are highly disruptive. All of a sudden, you can think a new business model. If you think about it, the energy community. So a lot of time and effort is focused about energy generation, but the real innovation, how do you couple the generation with consumption to create a tradable market of proximity, what we call filière courte en français. If you think about things like carbon, I mean, carbon removal, management, certification is going to be an essential service of tomorrow. There is no way we're going to meet the Paris energy targets without having an efficient carbon market, and that's where technology, data processing, and data analytics will come into play.
Laurent, Ardian celebrated next week, if I'm correct, the 10th anniversary of the fund. So that's, I would say, the French success story for the last 10 years, basically, and well done, really. How at Ardian Infra, you are the co-founder of Ardian Infra, you see also tech being an opportunity. Do you think there's a shift of the areas you were investing traditionally and now you bought, Ardian Infra, you invested massively last year in green yellow. How you would explain to us the change that you are seeing as an investor, as an equity investor in this area and more generally?
Thanks, Alexis. No, the point is really, I think it creates new businesses. You were mentioning green yellow. Definitely, it's all about optimization of energy consumption, and it's new ways of, proposing to industrial or corporate ways to reduce their consumption, to optimize their consumption, maybe also to develop with them. We can, for example, hold the CapEx, but delivering services. So we get the full, I would say, panel window of services to be brought. And I think this is really the way people should think now is, how can I use other tools? So in the case of green yellow, they get software to monitor. Today it's 2,500 sites. It's something around 60,000 data points just to monitor, the consumption of their clients. You need to think this way and say, what kind of new services could I bring, either with new technical solution, and it can be renewable, it can be maybe storage, it can be hydrogen, it can be, but also what kind of service could I add on top of those delivery. And that's really what we're seeing and what we're trying to push with green yellow.
Andres, you told me that what really matters are buildings. Would you like to emphasize?
I did.
Put some light on that.
But maybe before we dive into buildings, I think we're talking about opportunities and how Infratech creates opportunities for all. And for big corporates like us, it's also been a major issue and a major matter to seize that growth opportunity. And we identified a few years ago 3 segments that were growing much faster than the rest. You won't be surprised. It was about connected products. It was about energy efficiency, what we called internally Greenamics, and data centers. And we decided to invest massively in those, building in our capabilities, but also going and seek for what we were missing outside. Those are about 1/3 of our revenues globally and will be 50% of the group in no time. I mean, rather sooner than later. And back to buildings, because that's a good illustration. Buildings are today generate actually 40% of greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, it's a very big deal. And it's a particularly big deal in Europe, where we have a very old installed park, because you have 75% of buildings in Europe that were built before the 90s, so highly energy inefficient, and requiring refits. Currently, the rate of refit in Europe is around 1%, and if we want to meet our objectives, we need to double that. So we need to go to 2 or 2.5 if we want to just be level. And then there's the flow, because we are currently adding lots of square meters globally, most of it in emerging countries, but not only. There's studies that say that we're going to add in the next 10 years about the entire surface of North America in terms of building square meters. So it's a big deal. And making those buildings green is a major objective. You can do that in many different ways, but Infratech has a role to play. Of course, you can play on the materials and the envelope. You can play also on the planning and engineering phase, and this is where AI and digital twins are going to be extremely useful to modelize all that. And then you can also play on the hardware and the IT that you put inside. And this is where we play. If you take simple examples, but a connected thermostat allows you to save, some people say 15, but it goes actually up to 37% energy on a given year. You do the same for switches, you do the same for sockets, heating, air conditioning, and then you get to a pretty decent sum. So it's actually not one action in the chain that will allow to get to the objective. It's many of them, and that creates business opportunities for all of us playing around the ecosystem. Same thing with data centers, by the way.
Angeles, do you see, I have the answer, I think, from Matteo and Laurent, but seeing you as a big corporate, a major corporate in France and beyond, do you think that tech and infratech is going to be an area for opportunity, organic, I understand, but through M&A? Are you seeing, opportunities? And everybody, you can, my point of view is green yellow is already the opportunity that you guys used. Changing the business, turning the business is going to be also an opportunity. But as an operator, how you see things,
Absolutely, it is, and not only because of the returns that it can provide, but also because today, I think 40% of the technologies that we will need to meet our objectives are still under development, and most of them are under development in small-scale companies. So those are the guys who have the new ideas and the new technologies, who are trying new things. And big players, we have to work with them hand in hand to be able to keep the pace of innovation. And there's a point in time where we cannot do everything by ourselves. I have a couple of examples of that, but there's a beautiful small company, French startup called Netatmo. I don't know if some of you are familiar with it, founded by a few scientists, out of which Fred Potter. We invested in them in 2015 because we saw they had a very nice disruptive technology in IoT that was being applied basically in the smart home space to weather stations. We took a stake in it together with BPI, worked with them for a few years, and finally acquired them in 2018. 130 engineers who were very good in AI, very good in embarked software that we integrated in our teams. And 18 months later, we had actually incorporated their technology in our legacy products. and are now extending to new product families. So you will have, switchers by Netatmo, you will have conductors by Netatmo, you will have cameras, you will have many kinds of different products by, using that technology and then expanding it and using it for the rest of our range. We needed them for the technology and the ideas. They needed us to scale. So it's the combination of that, those two strengths that actually made the win. And we will see these in many other areas, like EV charging, places where the technologies are not just yet defined, and we need people who are basically seeking and scouting and trying.
Guys, one word with what really matters nowadays, which is debt. Nick WOOLFITT, he's at the head of Specialized Finance desk of NAB, the National Australia Bank, based in London. And you guys have invested massively, IDEX, Coriance, data for names that matters really in this market. How you see also as a debt investor, as an investor in infra, digital being critical or an opportunity in your portfolio?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the market for what, and we covered this with the definition of infrastructure, has moved on. If you look back 15 years ago, a transaction like TDF or like Arqiva in the UK was controversial. Was it infrastructure? Was it not? Now we've got telecom towers, fibre to the X data centres at the core of pretty much everyone's investment strategy, whether it's debt or equity. Project finance principles apply. We want to see that there's a market for there. We want to see that there's uptake for it. Most of it actually doesn't have that much technology risk. It's penetration risk, it's construction risk. It's all of those risks that, as a project financier, you analyse, you diligence, you seek expert counsel.
Sorry to interrupt. It's really interesting. You're seeing risk. So you see tech being a risk when you are doing your math or analyze to the investment, or it's...
Yeah, yes and no. It is, but it gets carved out into other sub-risks. So as a lender, and on the equity side, I'd imagine the same, the risk that you almost least want is asset stranding. What you don't want is something to be bypassed by technology, just getting it wrong. And we've seen that a little bit if you go back 10, 15 years with directory services. Infra investors went out and bought the yellow pages everywhere. Google happened. Not great for the yellow pages type directory businesses. Where we see tech as being especially relevant, though, firstly, we're a very relationship-focused lender. So as Laurent and Matteo invest in assets, we give due consideration to the investment thesis behind it. So that's absolutely part of it. But it's also within the asset and how the asset remains relevant, how an investment itself improves. But there's some really interesting stuff that comes out of it. And certainly on the building side, for example, we see we're a lender to a business in the Nordics that provides classrooms for schools. And the air quality and the build quality of what in Australia we used to have demountable classrooms which were freezing in the winter and at 100 degrees in the summer. But now those temporary buildings are better than the school stock in Finland and in Sweden. So it's showing actually in something that years ago you look at that and say it's a shed. Now it's actually a very high-tech solution. But we haven't noticed that. We haven't noticed that improvement because it's not seen as sort of AI. It's not quite as, sexy as some of the other sectors that get brought out. But it's a crucial part. If we want to decarbonise society, electricity is actually pretty easy. It's heat, it's agriculture, it's industry that are the challenges, and transport.
So it's interesting, and it's making the bridge with the, I would say, next topic. Opportunity is always something which is new, and something which is new at some point could be a risk or a challenge. My point of view, and just sharing that with you, I think is sustainability is going to be at the same time an opportunity, but also the challenge for this class of asset, because basically I'm just a lawyer, using tech means speed, means efficiency, so means use of energy. So if you are using energy through AI, through tech, that means that energy needs to be produced somewhere, somehow. Do you think, this is a collegial, I would say, question that sustainability is going to be either a challenge or an opportunity for this? I have my point of view, but maybe, Matteo, you would like to...
Yeah, look, I mean, you cover, so many topics, and clearly the energy angle of economic development, more broadly, that today is fueled by tech, it's a major question, probably stretched beyond this panel. But clearly we've seen that particular topic introducing tilt in the ground. We have countries with abundant, cheap energy, especially from hydro or renewable sources in other geographies rather than France, which are taking advantage of that to install the processing capacity of tomorrow. And maybe perhaps Laurent will talk about the hydrogen value chain. Of course, we're talking about importing hydrogen as ammonia from mega hubs that have access to cheap energy. Again, depriving some element of the value chain. But at the same time, it's a huge opportunity as well. I mean, we are excelling in introducing new technology, most of which needs yet to be developed. Within the funds, we took on the challenge of transforming traditional sector like the public street lighting. We are delivering smart street lighting to over 100 municipalities. That's a lot of people who are seeing probably not a notable change in what they're doing, but by upgrading the LED to new technology, we can reduce electricity consumption by up to 70%, depending which technology there is beforehand. But more importantly, we introduce new services as well, not only the Wi-Fi connectivity, but clearly the environmental monitoring sensor, all the field activity that are required in order to organize our society in a slightly better way, whether it's economic activity, economic development, or even leisure. So yes, quite a lot, but I think the future is bright, Alex.
Thanks, Matteo. Laurent, I think your strengths, I think I know you well. Maybe it's Ardian benefited from your strengths, vice versa. You have been a pioneer. You have been pioneering in this area with the car parks, smart car parks, but what you pointed out, Matteo, now focus in hydrogen, and you are the president of the supervisory board of Hy24. Would you like to put some color on, taking what Nick was saying, is hydrogen making existing assets obsolete, so at the same time could be an area of risk? But do you think that this area of risk at some point would become truly an opportunity?
So I think we spoke a lot about energy efficiency, but energy transition is, for me, the main topic of today. Right?
Absolutely.
And that's where I think digital tool helps a lot. I think, and that is really critical for some main infrastructure assets to say, how can I move forward? Like, take the example of airports or motorways. You need to find ways to offer a solution, a green solution, let's put it, or clean solution. How do you move from an airport to maybe SAF tomorrow and maybe a bit later to hydrogen, for example, or both? That is, I think it's really critical, and that's where we need to think about it. First step, I would say, and we worked a lot, and I think we were big pioneers on that kind, is to measure, first of all, measure, right? And see where is the impact of, we got scope 1, 2, 3, but scope 3 on an airport, scope 3 on a motorway. I think it's critical. We developed tools, so digital tools within the team. It was a mix of work between the team and the management of the various company. And we got, for example, a tool installed in 5 airports today. So that's the first point, to make sure that people understand what is the issue, right? And then you need to think a bit, forward, to say, okay, what can I do? I think something which is extremely interesting with the fund we raised on hydrogen, the fact that half of the fund come from industrial, half from financial investors. And we set up new forum, like expert committee, where people explain their issue, people explain what they are developing, what they're thinking about. So it could be an easy discussion like Airbus showing the plan to get a liquid hydrogen plane, I don't know, 2030, 2032, and just asking to the industrial around, guys, I need SAF, maybe I need hydrogen to test the plane. So what are your plans? When do you expect to deliver? And you know, it's really the way I think that make things moving is really to understand the full value chain, not only part of it, and making sure how can we answer each of us. And I think those forums we are developing are extremely useful. That's where, for example, we saw that we were missing equipment, exactly what you were saying, equipment at scale, right? Do we know how to treat hydrogen? For sure. But today, the largest, I would say, electrolyzer is roughly 30 megawatts, right? And we're discussing about plan to develop 1 giga, 700 megawatt. Recently, we invested in H2 Green Steel, so that is more like on the industrial part of the development of the hydrogen. 700 megawatt of electrolyzer. So where do you find those equipment? So that's why really we are setting up even a new fund now to help, so embracing the topic, but more largely, to help the equipment provider to develop at scale. So, and that is, I think, critical. I would say maybe last word and linked to what you were saying on that. Very impressive to see that on H2 Green Steel, where you don't get today any part of concrete on the ground, right? Banks following, it's I would call it early infra, right? We were using tools which I think bring a lot of value, not enough, but like digital twins, to show the seed, to show how we'll arrange for the connection to the network, to the electrolyzer, maybe the DRI tower and so on, just to show how it could work. And definitely, anytime you're adding a part of your system, going into more detail. So, of course, there will be legal stuff. Don't worry, Alexis, really to put that on paper. But again, that's really the way I think management now need to think, is really embrace innovation also on top of what we had before, like very stable long-term asset. Now you need to think differently with energy transition.
Thanks, Laurent. Very clear. And Angeles, I'm turning to you. Speaking of labor skill, talent, employees,
yes,
collaborateurs, as we say, how you, as running the show at a large corporate, you see you're addressing this topic or issue?
Yeah, for sure. I think I cannot agree more with Laurent with regards to one of the challenges around how we people deal with this. I mean, we have the capitals, we have the technology, but then there's actually real human beings behind it, and there's real human beings on the management side, and you just illustrated it very well about this need of cooperation and open innovation and working in a different way than we used to work before. It's also true for the people who actually will need to maintain our railways, who will need to act on our fiber networks, who will need to install over 1 million EV charging public stations a year. Because the infra sector does suffer already from a structural shortage in labor that hasn't gotten any better since COVID. And it's both a question of quality and quantity, because even if the people were available in number, because of all these infra tech coming in and all these digital technologies coming in, we do have a need to skill and reskill and upskill. So it is a challenge that a number of people are actually quantifying. I think only in the US, there's about 17 million workers that will leave the infra space in the next 10 years, just because of retirement and changing generations and other reasons. We do need to invest at least as much in that part of the equation. Otherwise, we will have the technologies and the capitals, but actually we will be unable to execute the plan. So
you need to keep the control of the tech, otherwise, without control of what you are getting, basically the asset will not work. And it reminds me of what my favorite philosopher is saying is Noah Yuval Harari, the Israeli philosopher, is saying that the end of the human, I would say, race will come if you are getting the control to somebody who's the AI. But last transition on that one, I think that we have on this panel I'm French by heart, but one French person who's Laurent. So we have Australia, Iran, and France. Angeles and Matteo, I think you are Italian. So how, and Spain. So it's a broad, I would say, color and brains here. So how you see this part of the world, Europe, and I'm saying proudly France, as being a heart for investment, and how Infratech is going to make us, France and Europe, competitive vis-à-vis our friends, but also competitors, namely China, US, Australia. Maybe, Nick, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of elements to it. One is, I think, there is a huge focus on security of supply at the moment. I think if you look back 2 or 3 years, supply chains weren't an issue. Now they are. And there's some very interesting things. I saw last week the French and Australian ministers signing I think it was an accord on critical minerals. That a lot of the critical mineral stock that goes into batteries, whether for EVs or for grid following or grid supporting batteries, is coming out of parts of the world that are challenging from an ESG perspective. So I think on that side, there is sort of more and more of a like-minded coalition of states that sort of look to de-risk the supply chains. I think the second thing that I just observe, I've been based in Europe now for 16 years, and as a bank, almost everything we've done in Australia we did in Europe first, which is completely...
So you said Europe first?
Yeah, Europe first.
Right.
Not necessarily France, but not
Almost.
but in many cases. So looking at the decarbonisation of things in the round, the first time, bizarrely, the first time NAB financed solar was in the UK. We come from a country, I come from a city where it's sunny 300 days of the year, and we financed it a little bit that way in that grey place. But that's because commercialisation happened earlier. The technology came through sooner at a scale. It's been the same in water. It's been the same in fibre. It's been the same in data centres, I think, we did in Europe before we did in Australia. Europe exports a lot of the future, and it needs to in some respects. The decarbonisation agenda that is being put out at the EU and at the national government level gets adopted by the rest of the world. So this is the incubation through government, through industry and through investors of a lot of the technology that will be a critical part of decarbonising society.
Laurent, it would be also interesting to listen to your point of view as a private equity, infra private equity actor. You need management team to run the business, correct? How you want to keep them incentivized?
And maybe to complete a bit the previous question, I think both with Ardian and I-24, we're looking at all geographies, right? Because what is, I would say, critical with the issue of energy transition is not like the topic of one country, it's global. Right? And we need to look at all answers that are brought by those various countries, and it can tell you completely different looking at Australia, looking at Asia, looking at Europe or US. You see massive plan, for example, on hydrogen, on electricity, on batteries or whatever, floating. Just like we need also people on the ground ready to develop and to move at scale. So we need management team ready to embrace those I would say, big topics. It's also sometimes, I would say, I would say we will need also political help for that. Like just thinking low that one topic, AFIR in Europe. So the EU develop a plan to put together on the full European network, motorway network, charging station and hydrogen station. And I think if you look at milestone is tomorrow, right? And so it's extremely challenging. And depending on the country, we see people moving maybe sometimes a bit more on hydrogen, some others on electricity. I think we need everything. We need all. We are late. So that's really, I mean, on paper we got support, but yes, we need management. We need people ready to embrace those big, I would say, development to meet the challenge. That's for me is critical.
I think we could speak 2-3 hours after, but I think it's done, unfortunately. Angeles, Laurent, Matteo, Nick, thanks indeed for your time.